Tony's very humble.
Yeah. So, Dirk, what kind of for something like this, where it's like an autobiography, what kind of research did you do? Did you actually do a lot of interviews with Tony, or did you go back and watch tons of like his footage on YouTube or things like that? Or
I watched a few interviews with him when I decided I was going to do the book. And then I stopped because I realized that I'm an unabashed fan of professional wrestling to begin with. Okay. So, I mean, you know, there's that. But I realized I wanted this book to be accessible to anyone. And to do that, I had to kind of go into this, you know, not blind wouldn't be fair to say, because obviously I know Tony and I know his body of work, but to kind of come into this with a fresh pair of eyes. So what I lie, you know, kind of fresh faced. And what we did was, it was me, it was Drina Joe as series editor, Mike Dawkins was there, Dave Silva. And once we had the structure of like the 10 chapters, and Mike helped with this too a bit, the 10 segments of his life we were going to cover. I was like, okay, Tony, tell us about the end days at WCW. And we'd hit record, and we would be there, and Tony's a natural storyteller anyway, being an announcer, obviously. And we would just talk, and I would take notes. Drina would take notes. We'd go back, compare notes. And we would just talk. And then my job was to kind of like think about, okay, whether we're talking about one night, like the Butts and Seats night, whether we're talking about the end of WCW, which was over a period of a couple months, or whether we're talking about his time when he stepped away from wrestling, which was 18 years. How are we going to cover all that in 10 pages? And then with what artist am I going to pair onto this story? Sometimes I knew in advance. Like I knew DJ was going to do the first one. Scott James was obvious for the WCW chapter. Sally Scott was obvious for An Unexpected Dinner when he meets Lois. But, I mean, that was it. And I think Drina could probably speak to the raucous nature sometimes of those calls. And having to keep us on track.
Yeah, because I would like to hear Drina how like and I'm sure the audience too, like what the editors do like on a project like this. Like do you try to help find the creative teams? Do you go over the scripts? Like what's the editor's kind of job on something like this?
Well, with this one with Tony, Dirk would be taking notes. It was recorded, so if we missed something, we could go back and watch it. But sometimes Tony would put something in his voice, like an inflection, and that's what I would write down, and I would like emphasize it and say, this is very important. We need to add this. But mainly, it was keeping them in line.
Yeah, you're almost like the boss in a lot of ways. Like trying to keep the project going, you know, and trying to wrangle in like the kids, you know, in a way, a lot of ways, right?
And you want to be able to put it on paper, and you want like an artist, but at the same time, you know, that's not going to fly. So it was nice getting. Like some of these meetings would go 4 or 5 hours.
Oh, wow.
So,
oh, my God.
You know, and we'd get 2 stories out of it, even though he would tell 5. Like, so it was just like sitting at the table with your favorite person on the planet and hearing them talk about their life, really.
Yeah. And that's going to be tough, too, is taking all these stories and finding like that 10, you know, for the book. Yeah. Like that must be tough, too. Like, was there a specific criteria that you guys were trying to follow, or were you looking for like?
Yeah, Mike Dawkins was really instrumental in helping with this, because Tony's done a podcast for a long time on ad-free shows.
Okay.
You know, What Happened When. So he's talked a lot about his life, and Mike helped me put together a kind of a rough outline for like, okay, this. So we had a box going in. I knew it was going to be 10 10-page stories. So 100 pages altogether, obviously. But yeah. So the book gets even bigger. But like Drina said, talking about, for example, the end of WCW, there's a lot that happened there. A lot happened. Or we have a chapter about the NWO and what happens when three of your biggest guys from WWF at the time, Hogan, Nash, and Hall, come into WCW. I'm gonna tell you right now, none of this was meant to bury anybody, and no one in the book gets buried. You know, we're not out to Tony was not out, no one's out to grind anybody down or, you know.
Yeah, make anyone look bad.
No, no, that's not. No, that's small. You know, no offense.
One thing I'm always fascinated too about with like biography comics or even, you know, movies or shows and stuff. Are you allowed to like? Do you have to go get permission from like Hulk Hogan to have him in the book, or is that covered under a certain law or anything?
I mean, it's one of the reasons we had Dawkins there, billing by the hour. You know,
gotcha.
But no, he was, you know, part of the story. We are not there's things you can do, there's things you can't. I don't think it would be very fair or ethical or maybe even legal to put Hulk Hogan on the cover of the book, for example.
Oh yeah, no, you couldn't do that.
Because then we're profiting off of it, you know. But Tony and Hulk knew each other. He's in the book. We're not making the guy look bad. We're not burying him. We're not, you know, being slanderous. We're not being jerks. But he's a part of that story. And again, Hogan, Hall, and Nash coming to WCW changed the landscape of that company when Tony was there. And it was symptomatic of an issue that slowly started to undo the company. Now, some people might argue that that's not a very flattering retelling of events, but it's the retelling of events as Tony saw them, but it's also data driven. You know, I mean, this is what happened. You know, Bischoff became friends with these guys, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. But again, then you take out Gary Bischoff, who actually cut a promo for the book. You know, one of the things we did with this campaign was like his video promos. Eric's seen some of the stuff in there. He knows. So, yeah, I mean, there's a fine line to walk when you're dealing with real people, but as long as you're respectful, you know, one of the mantras I had, actually, I should say, that I brought to the table up front, and we never had to exercise this clause, was a book is not a place to bury somebody. You know, I could.
JC's got his boots on tight. He's wearing black, ready for a fight. They're headed to Manchester. The crowd's insane.